with my father, it wasn't really a kind of a talking, conversation type
Mm-hmm.
relationship. We talked from time to time, and as I got older, we opened up a little more. But mostly it was, boy, didn't I tell you to
Mm-hmm.
do?
Mm-hmm.
uh, or you put your brain in a jaybird and he walk backwards. Uh, or get up and get out there and go cut that grass, or go out there and change the tire on that car, or change the oil in that vehicle, or get up and it's time you get out that bed.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. But so I can appreciate this opportunity
Mm.
that I get to talk to my son,
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
on his own show.
Mm.
Yeah.
What's happening, y'all? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now, where we're bringing the village to the brothers. Every couple of weeks, you can look forward to a quick inspirational message or a thought-provoking guest with knowledge and wisdom, all geared towards helping you be the best father that you can be. We're bringing the village to you. Now it's your turn to do something with what you learned. All right, y'all. Let's go. And I literally, man, I am thankful. First and foremost, I'm thankful to have a father. You know what I'm saying? Because,
Well, I learned later on that I was thankful to have one. It it was old school,
mm-hmm.
but he was there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And so, and it's interesting, you started off talking a little bit about your dad was not one that was open to a whole lot of dialogue, and that's my grandfather. And for those that are just now kind of tuning in, I'm having a conversation with my father, Keith Dorsey. And this to me is a very special conversation. But as we jump into our dynamic and our relationship and our journey, you started talking about your dad, my grandfather, Olin Dorsey, and he was born in 1925. He was drafted into World War II in 1943 at the age of 18. He came back and re-enlisted and did 30 years in the military, 3 tours with Vietnam, World War II, Korea. He earned 2 Purple Hearts. He was the father of 8. He was married to your mother, my grandmother, for 60 something, was 65, almost 65 years, something like that. Yeah. And again, but then this is a Black man who was born in Harlem, Georgia, which is outside of Augusta, Georgia, on a farm in the 1920s. And so you mentioned he was a man of few words, but then as I mentioned with the military career, he was also one that retired as a command sergeant major. So he was also used to not having to use a lot of words, because when he said do something, people just did it. And I bet that came back home as well in how he communicated and parented.
He frequently he would tell us, he said, boy, I can't have you out there acting up. Now, I command 150, 200 people, and what do you think they would think of if I can't even control my household,
Ooh.
the children in my house?
Mm.
So it was top kick. That was it. But now I also have to admit that now a lot of times in my early years, and as I got older, I started realizing that my father was in the military during a very changing time. It had been segregated, and after World War II, they started desegregating. And when I started thinking about it, I said, well, you know, my daddy was it risen to the rank of like a platoon sergeant,
Mhm.
and his platoon was mixed. It
Mhm.
wasn't all as they said colored at that point. He had white troops as well as black troops in his platoon.
Mhm.
So that was quite a statement in itself. You know that here was a black platoon sergeant in charge of white troops also.
Mhm.
Not just black troops, but white troops also. Because and we're talking about, I was born in '52,
Mhm.
and so you know I can remember him getting up and leaving at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Daddy was headed out the door going to work, and he wouldn't come back in till about 5:30, 6 o'clock that evening. So a lot of times my dad was really not around,
Mhm.
and as I grew older, you know, uh, but on holidays, he would do things that we would get together. We might go up to Harlem, and they might be having a cookout or something up there, and then we go up there and spend time. Because I can remember him on the 4th of July while he was stationed in Fogo, and he was off on the 4th of July. So on the 4th of July, on the 3rd of July, my daddy would load up the car and put it in. He would go up to Harlem, and they would barbecue one or two hogs, whole hog. He and his cousin, Hewlin Dorsey. They, they go up there and they kind of go down in the woods and dig out a pit and set it up, and they would have two hogs, and they would get big fire going, and they'd be down there all night long. And on the 4th of July, about 12 o'clock or so, we would go, we would get in the car with mama and ride up there. But so, you know, and we ride up to the country, and they would have hash and chipped pork and ribs and skins, and I mean, and they would have humongous amounts of it, and you know, it was kind of like a big family reunion.
Mhm.
Um, but in all fairness, my father was gone a lot of times in my life.
Mhm.
Um, he left and went to Germany, and he was in Germany 2 years before we went.
Mhm.
Uh, but and even when we got there, we stayed. Mama kind of had a lot to do with it, but unfortunately, I did not know my grandfathers.
Mhm.
They both had passed by the time I came along.
Mhm.
Uh, my mother's father passed when she was 12 or 13 years old, and they say Mr. Olin, my my grandfather, his name was Olin also. He passed shortly after I was born, but
Yep. He
I
died the
was
same year, 1952. Yep.
right. Okay. Um, but my I did get to see and interact with my great grandfather on my mother's side.
Okay.
He was Jackson Harris, and he lived in downtown Augusta, in the black area, black
Mhm.
section. They call it more or less the Bethlehem Laney Walk
Community.
community area.
Okay.
Okay, but but he was, as I learned later, he was called the Candy Man
Mhm.
because he actually started making the candy for Hollingsworth Mr. Hollingsworth.
Mhm.
Mr. Hollingsworth was a white man that used to come by with his wagon and pick up the candy that Jackson Harris made, and he would take it around to the stores and sell it until he got enough that he went on and he bought a little candy factory, and he started making candy there. And it grew into from Hollingsworth candy to fine products. Uh, and it was a pretty big
Big
operation.
operation. Hmm.
But anyway, that's just kind of so, and my I had a step grandfather, Mr. Barker,
Hmm.
and also on my mother's side, that he was an interesting man. He'd leave for work early in the morning, and he'd come back about five 5 o'clock in the evening, and he'd come in and eat, and then go sit in his rocking chair out in the backyard in the shade,
Hmm.
smoke his pipe, and read newspaper.
Hmm.
Um, but and that, that's just a little bit of my background. So I was fortunate enough. We moved. Well, fortunate or unfortunate, because it kind of shakes you up when about every 4 years after we left and moved to Germany. Then there was a family tragedy,
Hmm.
which brought us back within a year from Germany. We were supposed to be in Germany for about 3 years, but um, it did something happened. I lost one of my brothers in death over there, and so
Hold on, Dad. Because I think that's a very pivotal, one of the pivotal moments in your story and in the family story, right? Part of it is, I'm named after him, right?
yes, you are
And and
one of
so when Granddad was stationed in Germany and you all moved to Germany, um,
right.
you know.
Germany, there were 6 children.
Mhm.
And my mother moved from Augusta, Georgia to uh, Friedberg, Germany, with 6 children.
Mhm.
Um, one of them in arms, and the other one, just kind of toddling. Um, there, were- I had an older brother, and then it was me. I was the second oldest, and then there was a set of twins. One of them was named Michael, and the other was named uh,
Leonard.
Leonard.
Mhm.
And then there was Margaret and Kelvin.
Mhm.
So, um, so we moved to Germany. I'm still trying to figure out how my mama managed on an airplane
With
with
6 kids
6 kids.
back in the late 1950s. Yeah, early 1960s. Yeah.
Early 60s.
Mhm.
Early 60s. Um, and you know, so while we were in Germany, um, we went to a scout meeting. We were in the Cub Scouts, and the Cub Scout meeting was around the corner, around out because when you're in Germany, you lived in a housing precinct.
Mhm.
That was the military families lived in and basically it was just a complex, an apartment complex that their family lived in. And but we joined the scout meeting and scouts. We'd been to a scout meeting around the corner, but there was this in Germany. You have all these little green areas, parks, and so forth. And we had gotten there during the summer, and we went to this little park, and there was a stream running through there. And, I think we were about 7. We kind of had free reign. And when I think back, I said, we were 7 or 8 years old, and we were wandering all over the place. But we went to the park and with some other kids from our area, and we got there and we went down and saw this little stream, and I think the stream might have been a foot deep, 2 feet deep, something like that. But it was kind of more like a drainage ditch, really. But
y'all thought it was a stream as a kid.
7 or 8 years old,
it's a stream.
It's just a stream, Okay. Well, anyway, we had gone. So this was in February. We went back. We went to the scout meeting, and we were coming back. It had been raining, and it snowed and raining, and we decided we were gonna cut through this park. And while we were cutting through it, we saw, we were gonna visit this little stream. Now, when not realizing that it was like, as I said, a drainage ditch, but this little stream was now a raging river. In that snow had melted, rain had fallen, and all this rain, runoff water, was down in the ditch, moving very fast at a very swift rate. And it was no longer just a 1.5 feet, 2 feet deep. It was 6, 7 feet deep now. We didn't know that.
Yeah.
It didn't comprehend. So we were down there piddling around, and Mike stuck his foot out there. And, that kid's gonna do it. He stick his foot in the water, and he was standing on a muddy bank, and it knocked him off balance, and the current swept him on into the river, and he drowned. So because of that, we came back to the United States.
But Dad, I'm gonna say is because again, this is all part of the storyline, and it's challenging, and this is part of my personal healing journey as we kind of get into you and I's dynamic, was really diving into your story, right? And in 2022, 2023, as we're evolving, we have, the emergence of counseling and therapy and support systems for this or that. You go back 60 some odd years to the early 1960s, when a tragedy happens, there was not this infrastructure. There was not this support. And then let's couple it back to what you were saying earlier of, yes, your mother, my grandmother, had these kids and she was slinging these kids, bringing these kids all over, but granddad was gone due to his military duties all the time. So it was like, when something like that happened, you being 8 or 9 years old, him being 7 or 8 years old, what type of support was there for y'all as kids after dealing with a tragedy like that?
Well, we had to, basically all we did was we had to go and do a police report, and Mom and Dad just said, you got to suck it up and we got to move on.
Ooh, Jesus.
It wasn't time, because see now, they were trying to get the body shipped back to
Mm.
Augusta, and then at the same time get packed up and moved out of the apartment that we were in and packed and moved back to
Mhm.
the
The United
United States.
States.
Right.
Mm.
So
And like you said, there's 5 other kids as well at the time. And
right,
so young kids, like the oldest at the time being like 9. And
right,
so everybody, and so in this transition, and the reason I'm highlighting this is because in the midst of tragedy, there was no time to heal. Okay. And the reason I'm putting a pin in that is because, again, as I had to go through my own processing and learning and accepting and journey to growth with regard to our relationship, I had to go down the rabbit hole of understanding the importance of and developing empathy for the fact that starting at a very young age, there was trauma and no infrastructure, not even really any space to really grieve and heal. Okay. And again, I'm saying that not just for you and I, it's for someone listening to this as they hear more and more things unpack. It opens up because everybody's dealing with something, everybody's gone through something. Um, but I think it also is incumbent for us all going through anything to understand the importance of having grace and space to heal. Because if you don't heal, that's when other things have the capacity to manifest, right? And the reason I'm saying that is, as you move a little further in the journey, you mentioned that there were it's twins. You had your older brother, a set of twins, 2 younger, and then eventually you had 2 youngers after that. So one
right.
of the twins passed away in Germany due to drowning. Fast forward 3 years, you're back in the United States. Talk to me a little bit about the other twin.
Okay. The other twin, well, apparently he had gotten kind of sick. But anyway, we moved back. We were stationed in at Fort Dix, New Jersey for about 4 years. Then Daddy was shipped back out to Korea. So we came back to Augusta. But somewhere along the line, the other twin had an illness to develop. Later on, we come to find out it was leukemia. But once again, old school family, mom and dad, they didn't talk to us about it. We just knew he had to go to the doctor all the time. So while he was by the time we got back to Augusta, he was making regular doctor visits, and mama was always on us. You can't wrestle and fight with him like you used to. And so, really, I'm treating just like
Yeah.
we wrestle and stuff. And Dad was gone for a year, and when he came back, we moved to Columbus, Georgia. We stationed in Fort Benning. So, and when he got it seemed like he just seemed to be going to the doctor more and more, and nobody really told us what was going on. We were kind of naive. But at the age of, and being a big family, couple of shared beds, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Okay. Well, we were in Fort Dix, and I was 13. He might have been 12.
You said Fort Benning or Fort Dick? Fort Benning?
Fort Benning.
Okay.
Okay. We were stationed in Fort Benning. And at Fort Benning, I know that one morning, at the age, I think I might have been 13, he might have been 12.
Mhm.
But you know, you kind of in the bed, you hear noise going on around, and I woke up, and he and I kind of shared a bed together. Um, he had died during the night.
Mm,
And
mm,
I woke up that morning and he was in the bed next to me, but he had passed away. So
mm.
mom got us out of the bed and got us out of the room. And then he came in and took him out. So and later we come to find out that he had had leukemia. And he,
Dad, I mean, again, you start thinking about trauma and tragedy, and this was now the mid 1960s. And so 3 years or so after his twin brother passed away, the other one, and I will mention the one that passed away the first time, his name was Michael Valentino. The one that passed away due to leukemia was Leonard Charles. My name is Michael Leonard Dorsey. So I am named, I have the first names of, your brothers. But
right.
again, I want to ask, after Leonard passed away at night and you woke up in the bed with him, what was the response, or what was the healing that took place after that happened as a family?
Well, it was um basically, it was kind of like, look, we got to go on, and and take care of the little ones, and kind of keep try to keep some kind of normalcy around the house. So we had duty to do, and that was basically it.
Mhm.
Um,
So base again, and this is, I'm emphasizing this for
no,
everybody listening.
as far as counseling and all that, no, we didn't do any counseling. We just kind of.
But even as a family, like because you stop and you think again, like you mentioned, granddad, World War II, Vietnam, World War II, I mean Korea, doggone a black man born in Augusta, Georgia, or in Harlem, Georgia in 1925. So you grew up in all this racism, all this stuff, all this drama, all this trauma. You're used to dealing with death and killing and this and that and whatever because of the nature of the life that you live professionally, but then also based off of where you're from. Grandma birthed 8 kids, and within the span of 3 years, lost two of them at a young age. And then you still had six other children at this point. So because there was 8 total of y'all, there were 6 others left. And it was just like, to me, again, going through my personal journey of starting to understand the why behind maybe some of the actions that maybe started to take place later in life, I came back to those seminal moments. And even in this conversation, you articulated the fact that basically growing up, granddad wasn't there. And you also, and I appreciate how you laid out that you didn't have your grandfathers, you had a step grandfather and your great grandfather a little bit. So when it came down to just like a father figure that was a dominant presence day in and day out, that was also emotionally available for you as you're going through adolescence, because these things happen by the time you were 13 years old, right? So
Right.
emotionally you're growing, emotionally you're coming to your own, you getting hair on your balls, it's like you're becoming, a young man. And when it comes to guidance and someone to help you to unpack that, to walk through that process, to make sense of some of this stuff, to help you, that was not there. And to that point, what happens for a lot of people, if we don't have avenues and an environment for us to effectively heal, we take matters into our own hands and we start going down rabbit holes of self-healing, self-medicating, finding different ways to cope with what's really boils down to this unmitigated trauma that's buried inside of me.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess you're right. I guess it did create holes as they say, holes in my soul, but you know, and but it was one of those things that we were expected to just survive and make it, so we were surviving. Um, I guess we were that kind of attributes to we take a drink or whatever to just kind of escape it and keep on moving.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, I survived.
Mm-hmm.
You but I have to give everything, because I look back over it and I think about it. I say, uh, my dad did the best he could with
Mm-hmm.
what he knew how.
That's right.
My father finished maybe the 11th grade, but he sucked it up and he made it all the way to the top enlisted man rank. In his army career, and mom never really worked. She did some little part time as we got older, but for the most part, mom was a stay at home mom. She just took care of us.
Mm-hmm.
In some kind of way, we made it. I mean, I laugh people and I tell them, I say, we were poor, but we didn't even know we were poor,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that sort of thing. But, and I look back and I say, um, as as a father myself, I was a terrible dad, but I had help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had God sent me some guardian angels to bring me through a lot of shit. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, he did. Um, and he granted me enough wisdom to know that as my children were born, that I needed to give them the blessing of like Abraham blessed Isaac and like Jacob blessed Esau and Jacob. Um, uh, and that was something that was real deep with me, is that when each one of you were born, you know, in the quiet moments that y'all were babies, I can remember I come back there and I would put my hand on your forehead and I would pray and ask God to bless each one of you. So, and he did. Um, you know, God has God has brought me a long way. In that he blessed me with your mother.
Mm-hmm.
There were other women in my life that I could have possibly married, but he gave me your mom to marry,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
which is turned into a blessing. Because through the ups and downs of my life, she has pretty much remained with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thank God for that. Uh, and my prayer frequently was, Lord, do not curse the sons for the sins of the father. You know, and I think that every black man should at some point take his child, whether male or female, and put his hands on them and give them the blessing of the Father. That's important. It sounds ritualistic or whatever, but it's that passing of that spirit from the father to children. They should need to be blessed. Each one of my grandchildren, I quietly gone and put Santa Claus on their head and ask God to bless each one of them. But but when y'all were growing up, we had we had some good times, because I can remember taking y'all fishing. And whatever. But at some point, I realized that y'all were too big for my hands to hold. I needed some bigger hands. So, it was important that y'all knew God. And he had blessed each one of you along the way, in ways that I could never, ever do. So, because he blessed you with uncles and friends of uncles and
a village.
exactly.
We were blessed with a village.
A real village, and people that kind of gave y'all positive insight and guidance. Now, and in growing up, there was basically, we had 3 house rules. Y'all love sports, and that was fine. But your mother and I agreed on there was Church of God first, education was second, and character or Boy Scouts was third.
That's right.
So, and y'all, and through that, y'all learn, y'all had the benefit of 2 types of grandparents too. On your mother's side, y'all had well-educated grandparents that was driving that process of
master's degrees back in the 1950s. Yep.
Right. But on my side, you had grandparents that were, that taught you basic life skills in that. Your grandfather taught you, y'all had to grill and cook out.
Yep.
And he could give you, little worldly advice, like it was good old country advice, such things as worry is a bad investment.
Yeah, he told me that numerous times. To worry is a bad investment.
The worry is a bad investment, and I think with Daniel, because Daniel was military oriented, he was in ROTC and everything, but I think, and when Daniel was getting ready to go to college, the Air Force wanted him to come and play football, and they were.
Yep.
But I think somewhere along the line, his granddaddy told him, military is fine, except for WAR.
War. Yeah.
Because I can remember your mother telling me, she said, I kept saying, what Daniel, you can go in the Air Force and go to the academy and get your education and get, paid, and She said, well, what's your education? And he said, he told us
WAR. Yeah.
WAR.
Yeah.
And, it's amazing how, how God sent him that message because
That's it. And again, he works in God works in mysterious ways. You know what I'm saying? It goes through people, through circumstances, through situations, and and again, to your point, that is one of the things. And again, I appreciate you, and I appreciate the fact that you and mom understood the value of village. As an African proverb, it takes a whole village to raise a child. The actual tagline of Black Fathers Now is bringing the village to the brothers. So we're using technology to bring the village to the brothers because we need it. And going back to, again, like your journey and your story, you had a big family, but as it pertains to support through traumatic situations and circumstances, you had people there, but as it pertains to the village to help support through it, again, it was a different day and time, but that wasn't there, which then again opens up the window to us self-medicating and finding ways to deal with it ourselves, some constructive, some not so constructive. And that kind of brings me down, kind of our journey, or to the point of our journey. And and I'm gonna be honest, it's interesting, you even in the beginning of this mentioning how basically you grew up with a father, but you didn't grow up with having a real present father all the time due to circumstance. It's not a knock on granddad, but it was just the circumstances of, the time frame. And they were from an era in which we don't talk about things. You just did it, right? And so there wasn't a platform for that. And so when you start thinking about guidance, you then start thinking about how does then a young man figure out his way through life without any guidance, or without a whole lot of structural guidance, or that advisor, or that group of advisors or counselors. Again, like you all recognize with us, we grew up with basically a bevy of counselors. We grew up with a whole council of advisors from all walks of life. If I had a question about everything from girls to money to education to school to Boy Scouts to church to sports to what, I literally basically had a whole Rolodex of people I could call. You know what I'm saying? Like that was the blessing of what was set up, the infrastructure around us, which then put us in a position to mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically deal with some of the issues that you face growing up, especially as a young Black man. And so I said that to say, when, over the years, when I was going through my own personal journey of really just trying to understand us, because again, we had a challenging dynamic growing up, right? And, it was one of those things where it just didn't make sense to me. And on a personal level, it just didn't make sense to me. And what was always challenging to me was, like when I talked to some of your friends and all of that, they would always tell me, man, your daddy like the smartest man I never met. Man, your daddy, man, let me tell you, he was the one. It was interesting when I was speaking with God Daddy Bo recently. He said, coming out of college, your daddy was the standard. He was like, your daddy came out, he was wearing a suit every day. He was working at the bank. He had this little Toyota. I think he had either just bought a house. He was the standard. All of us that were in college wanted to be like your daddy when we were growing up. He was like, everybody looked to you and looked up to you. And it's like throughout my childhood growing up, I used to hear stories about, man, dude, your daddy, when it comes to math, man, that brother was smart. Oh man, when it comes to this, that brother knows this and that, and he could fix this and could fix that. And it was a challenge for me because there was this looming disease there of addiction. You know what I'm saying? And because I hear these stories, but it's kind of like, I would liken it to, how people talk about, like, if you see like an old guy walking down the street and then somebody says like, man, that dude was like an all-American, whatever. He was all everything back in the day. If you had seen him play or whatever, you'd be like, what? But then you see him walk down the street, you're like, that guy? Oh yeah, that guy was a 3-time All-American, or that guy was all everything. And it was a challenge for me because what I hear about versus what I'm seeing and experiencing, it didn't always line up. And so for me growing up, it was I was conflicted and challenged, right? Because it's like I'm one that always I yearn for that thing that everybody was talking about. It's like I want that. You know what I'm saying? I want that in house. I want to, my dad to show me these things. I want to be that thing that everybody's talking about. But because of the disease of addiction, I wasn't able to see that all the time. And the thing is that caused me growing up to have some really conflicting emotions and feelings, actually towards you. You know what I'm saying? Like it caused me I mean, I loved you, but I didn't always like you. I mean, it's probably the best way to put it. And
as I said, my prayer was, Lord, do not, and he answered it.
yes.
He answers the prayers that do not curse the son for the sins of the father.
But I'm gonna add something to
it. And the thing about it is that y'all all found your way, in that you didn't linger around Augusta per se to learn. Y'all were, I guess because of your anger with me, y'all were willing to venture out further than the realms of Augusta. But I'm sorry that I was a disappointment, but then again, God is taking good care of you. Like I said, y'all were too big for my hands to hold. He had somebody with bigger hands.
But Dad, I was going to say this, and this is the part that I was kind of getting to with it was I grew up with a lot of anger and resentment and frustration, but but all these stories about this guy, this man that all your friends, your contemporaries, people who grew up with you, all these stories kept raining. I'm just like, something don't add up here, right? And it was interesting because as I go through my own journey and as I was becoming an adult and I moved away and then I got married and then I became a father myself, right? And then it was one of those things where it's just like something happens to you when you become a husband and a father and you're just like, dude, I got to figure this thing out because I can't move forward and be the husband and the father that I can be holding on to anger and hate and frustration. So that again caused me to do a deep dive into you. And that's why I was so really wanting you to go into the traumas as a kid, because it made me understand that I didn't grow up hating you. It took a long time, dude. It took me a long time to get to the point where I could really say, I do not hate my father. It really got to a point in which, and this is a kind of a revelatory thing. I created Black fathers now initially with the wrong intentions. I initially created Black fathers now because I was trying my best to not become my father. And so I wanted to be super dad. I was wanting to be Mr. This and Mr. That and cook and clean and do this and do that. I wanted to be the polar opposite of what I felt like I experienced. I was trying my best to run from that. And it's interesting, the more you run from something, the more the thing you're running from, it starts to run next to you. And then as it runs next to you, you look at it. And once you open yourself up, you come to realize that the thing that you're looking at is not the same thing that you saw back in the day. And I said that to say that it took all of that for me to get to a point in which I don't hate my father. I don't even dislike my father. I dislike the disease that infected my father. because my father is an amazing dude. Like one of the things, you know, I was on a podcast platform a while back and they asked me, it's like, what's something that you learned from your father? Because I talked about, you know, kind of my journey a little bit. And I said, you know, my dad is legitimately the most resourceful dude I've ever met in my life. And it's funny because that is 100% me. Like in the kitchen, you know, Maisha, my wife, will come in and she's like, we ain't got nothing in here. And I'm like, get out the way. Come back in 30 minutes and it's a full-on meal. She's like, where the hell did you get this stuff? I'm like, it was sitting right there. There's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little sprinkle of that, a little season of that, mix it together. And I was just like, as I started recognizing, I was like, that's my dad, because you are one that, you know, you go out in the garage and yeah, you might collect most stuff in the garage and most people need to, but it's a little piece of this and a piece of that, half of something of this, a little sprinkle of this. And then you need a tool for something. And I give you 30 minutes and I go out there, you've constructed some apparatus that actually works better than something you could buy at Home Depot. And I'm just like, huh. And so it was like me then connecting the dots to this brilliance that was inside of you. And for probably 30 years of my life, I was blinded by the addiction that was between us for me to be able to see that brilliance. And it's like, I'm so fortunate, thankful, and blessed now that I've come to a point in which I can see the brilliance that's there. And the thing that's most awesome is I see that brilliance shining out in me. And that brilliance is you. And that's the thing to me that is awesome. It's kind of like this redemptive thing. And I also say the other part to it is you had challenges, or we had challenges, or you admitted that, you know, you weren't great as a father to us. But I'll flip it and say, as a grandfather to my children, you're doing a great job. And so it's like God gives us these opportunities, and sometimes they may come at the 11th hour, but it doesn't matter whether they come at the 11th hour or the first hour. As long as they come, you know what I'm saying? You get that opportunity. And so for me seeing my kids go and play with Papa, or my nieces and nephews go and hang out with Papa, I'm like, yeah, I might not have gotten it to the level that I wanted it, but I'm thankful that they are able to get it at a level that is, you know, really impactful and beneficial and loving to them. So I said all that to say, I'm at a point now in which I have to tell you, thank you.
Yeah. I wish I could go back and tell my father, thank you, you know, but, cause it's I sit here, you know, and I got his flag, and it's, you know, mounted in a little case and everything, you know, from his funeral with his medals on it. I got it mounted on the wall. But see, when I was growing up, I didn't see him as a miracle happening, you know, because like I said, in the 50s, you know, desegregation, here he was a little country boy that was now a platoon sergeant over not only black troops, but white troops. You know, I can remember some Saturdays we look up and 3 or 4 white privates that were in his platoon and found their way downtown to Top Kick's house. You know, and we lived in a little small house down in the hood as it is now. But you know, it was a nice neighborhood then. It wasn't anything. But and it was just, you know, out of respect, they just respected him so much. They come look for him on a Saturday and want to spend time with him and learn things. And there were, you know, and there are a lot of things that he taught me in terms of, you know, working on cars. You know, or if something broke at the house, we didn't call the repairman.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Repairman was the last person we called. He said, "Boy, come on, we got to get out here and go fix this pipe. We got to go out here and change the brakes on this shoe on this car, whatever." And we get out there and we do it. You know, I can I can remember me and my brother, my oldest brother. You know, and that's another thing. You know, me and my older brother, we were. I guess we were really tight. You know, you didn't mess with one without having to deal with the other. Right on up until and we fell out. And when we fell out, that's kind of because you know he was kind of like my advisor per se. Al,
Yep.
yeah, your uncle Al, because he knew a lot of things. I was more naive. I was book smart, but he was worldly.
He was street smart.
Yeah, he had the street smart, you know, because he could calm me out. He could talk me out of all kinds of things. I remember, you know, I be saving up my little money, and he come in and say, "But look, let me hold this. I get this back to you." I knew he wasn't gonna give it back to me. But I give it to him. But you know, there were some things, you know, because on some of them jobs I had, you know, I said, "Well, I'm so and so," and he come in and he said, "Wait a minute, slow down. Let me tell you something. You got a job everybody else want." I do. You know, I didn't know that. I didn't. Just like you telling me, you know, people were talking about. But there was the thing about it was, you know, God sent me a guardian angel because you know it key points in my life. Now, my 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 disappointment is that I did not trust him more to go further than I went. You know? But then again, you know, and I had the you know Southern Bell job, but I could see it, but that was not I was going in the wrong direction. I should have been moving more towards substance. But then once again I started, you know, association. You have to be careful who you associate with. I started associating with some of the wrong people, you know, listening to some bad advice myself. And that all kind of came about when me and my brother fell out and weren't talking to each other for a while, you know. And I kind of slipped into that. But anyway, and, you know, and I couldn't see that then, but now, you know, I see it. And he he would get mad with me and I did about this. And we just it was just kind of, you know, we get along from time to time, but for years, you know, we felt falling out and wasn't wasn't really talking to each other. But you know, but that's all right. That's another, you know, story. But
you know what though, Dad, it's interesting because again, even as you mentioned that, it comes back to this whole notion of community, of support, of counsel, of village, because kids need a village, but adults need a village too. We all need a place of refuge. My last episode was about me dealing with the flu and stuff, and we all need a place of refuge. We all need this place where we can legitimately lean on someone to help us through, or even like with the fraternity that we're in, our motto is friendship is essential to the soul, right? In the sense that sometimes your friends will stick closer to you than family will. But the thing is, we all need those people, that infrastructure, that village around us. And when we start going at things alone is when we're ultimately vulnerable. And that's where, if you have someone who's a trusted confidant, an advisor, a spouse, a child, a parent, whoever, maybe a group of people, that's when that person sees you going down the wrong path, can pull you back and say, hold up, man. That ain't the route you need to go. It's kind of like when you hear, you talk to some guys who are from different communities and, from the hood, and, maybe everybody knows that this one's the chosen one. So even those guys who are out there doing dirt, they see them coming. They'll say, no, this ain't for you. You need to go home, or you need to go to the gym. You need to get up out of here, because they're looking out for the fact that they don't belong over here. And so, and that again is part of the village. I know that's kind of a de facto village that people don't like to talk about, but that's right. A village as well, because they're in essence saying, look here, shorty, you ain't supposed to be over here. This is for us. We the thugs. You ain't the thug. You need to go and get in your books.
Right. Exactly. And see, and that's old school.
Mm-hmm.
Because and I know what you're talking about, because I have stumbled into, I think I was about 14 or so, and they have these little liquor houses down in the old neighborhood. And I kind of, I just, there was this house, and I was just kind of standing out there, hanging out, and and the guy came out the back door, and I see people coming in and out the back door, and I was just standing there kind of watching and whatever, and the guy came out and he said, "You so-and-so boy, how old are you?" And I told him, I said, "I'm 15, 16, He said, "Let me tell you something. You don't get your ass on away from around here,
mm-hmm.
I'm gonna beat your ass, because you don't need to be around here."
Mm-hmm.
And see, but in the old school, they would tell children,
mm-hmm.
go away.
Yeah.
And just like you're saying, this ain't for you.
and and it's interesting. Even I remember like the movie Ray. That was part of the movie Ray with Ray Charles, how, the guys were, getting into drugs and stuff. And Ray was wanting to get down. And they kept trying to tell him, look, Ray, this ain't for you. Ray, you need to get out of here. Ray, you need to go. And eventually they were just like, you know what? Fine. If you want, I'm not, you want to sign your own death certificate, come on. And they let him come in. And that was kind of the opening for him to go down a rabbit hole. But again, fellas, ladies listening, anybody listening to this conversation between my father and I want to encourage you all to find that village, find that community of support. If you don't currently have it, be intentional about creating it. Make sure that if you're a parent, your kids have a village of support around them, because we're going to deal with trauma. We're going to deal with issues. We're going to deal with, challenges. And if we try to deal with these things alone, that's an uphill battle, right? On the flip side, if we try to deal with it alone and we don't have the proper information, it could send us down a rabbit hole, which could be detrimental to us, our family, and all the people connected to us. And so,
Father, bless your children.
And fathers, bless your children, right? Mm-hmm. Bless your children. And Dad, I mean, again, I appreciate, you having this conversation with me. And, the reason people who are listening, why I wanted episode 300 to be the conversation with my father is because as the new year comes in, so as we move into 2023, Black Fathers Now is going to take on a new name. I'm still going to have dynamic conversations, but it's going to open up a little bit more. So we're going to change names. We're going to rebrand the podcast and the platform. It's going to be some really, really, really dynamic stuff. But I just felt led to make a transition with regard to what I'm doing. And, there's a friend of mine. He actually grew up across the street from my grandparents. It's a guy named Carl Rogers. And he and I chatted about 2 years ago. And we were talking about, just making moves in life. And he said something to me that I still use to this day. He said, I don't move unless I'm moved. And I was just like, wow, it's simple yet profound in the sense that once I'm moved, once something inside of you moves, that's when it's time for you to make a move. And so as it pertains to Black Fathers Now, if you're already subscribed, you just keep subscribing. You'll just see the podcast take on a new name over the course of the next month and a half. Sometime in January, I'll do the official flip over. But if you've not subscribed yet, you're just listening to this, wherever you're listening to this, go ahead and subscribe. Follow Coach Mike D across the board on social media, on YouTube, because when you follow Coach Mike D, there's some more stuff coming. We got some really dynamic stuff coming down the pipe to really help individuals maximize the quality of life that they're living. And so, so just be on the lookout for that. But as we finish this thing up, man, Dad, you have anything you like to add?
Just, I love my children, my sons, and I love my grandchildren. And
your daughter-in-laws too. Don't forget about them.
Who?
Your daughter-in-laws. Your sons are all married. You better, man. Look, because these things go on wax, brother. They're gonna be like, "Ooh, so your daddy loves y'all, but he don't love us."
They are.
I know. I'm just playing with you, man. I know we're all connected. We are one. So if you say you love us, that means you love them too.
I love my sons and their wives and my grandchildren.
And your wife too.
Oh, that is my partner.
Yeah, okay. But again, like I said, these things. Yeah, about to say, because these things get recorded, and so people be like, "Yeah, he mentioned everybody. He ain't even mentioned his wife at the end. He ain't mentioned."
Okay. Shout out to my wife.
Yeah.
who has stood by me through it all, and shout out to my sons who have been through it all with me. And shout out to their wives who they love my sons, and I love them for that. And shout out to my grandchildren who add inspiration and give me a second opportunity to be a better father than I was, a better grandfather than I was a father.
Well, man, I don't think there's any better way to end our conversation, but I do want to say, man, thank you. And I love you. And, looking forward to, I guess I'll see y'all in a few weeks or something anytime soon. But but we just say, I love you. I thank you. And, just continue on your journey of, being better today than you were yesterday and better tomorrow than you are today. And
well, I have changed quite a bit.
That's what I'm saying. That's why. See, and I'm gonna tell you, Dad, again, like I told you before, that this is not some, airing, dirty laundry and all of that. I will say this, and again, if you want to go down a rabbit hole, you can. Whether it comes at the 11th hour or it comes at the hour number 1, as long as change happens, that's a good thing. And I'll even say this: no matter what the catalyst to change may be, sometimes it takes some type of radical, drastic situation to cause change to finally get in your face and say, you know what? I think I need to change something up. You know what? I don't care when it happens. I really don't care how it happens. As long as change happens, to me, that's the fruit that the tree is bearing. And that's letting you know the Lord is working.
Well, I want to thank you and your brothers. You have always made me proud of all three of you.
Mm.
You know, you have always conducted yourselves in such a manner that I'm proud to say that I am your father.
Well, I'm proud. Look, check this out. I'm proud to say that I'm your son. So thank you so much. So ladies, fellas, everybody listening, as always, follow. Again, Black Fathers Now, the podcast, the name will change over the course of the next week. But if you follow Coach Mike D on Instagram, if you follow me on YouTube, just Google Coach Mike D, Mike Dorsey, whatever, you'll find me somewhere. And be on the lookout for the new name change and everything. It's really coming down pretty soon. You know, just follow, share this thing out. I hope this was very beneficial. Thank my dad, Keith Dorsey. And until next time, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. And I'll holler at you. Peace.
All right.
Yo, fellas, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And always visit blackfathersnow.com, as well as follow Black Fathers Now on virtually every social media platform you can think of. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. Just follow us and engage with us, man. Look forward to hearing from you. And I guess until next time, I'll holler at you. Peace.